Bigfoot of the Blues by Vance Orchard. Read by Tom Cantrell. Chapter 2. Oh, there were doubters. But a lot of other people agreed with Paul Freeman when he reported he'd seen a Bigfoot on his rounds as a Forest Service watershed patrol rider. This was the theme in a column I wrote for the Walla Walla Union Bulletin, June 20th, 1982, a few days after Freeman reported his sighting. Here's what I wrote. Paul Freeman, spotter of a huge, hairy, man-like creature, as he made his Mill Creek watershed patrol rounds, is not alone in his conviction he saw the legendary Bigfoot, or Sasquatch. Sasquatch is the name given the animal by British Columbia Indians. Freeman drew a lot of support locally and has drawn more as the story spread around the Northwest and the world by way of Associated Press and other news broadcasting media. And Freeman and his family have drawn a lot of attention since he sighted the creature on an old logging road on the edge of the watershed near the top of the Tiger Canyon Road, about 8 miles from Mill Creek. An interview by the New York correspondent of the London Times was pretty exciting, according to Nancy Freeman, and it was only one of several interviews Freeman has done since the morning of June 10th. Freeman, an acknowledged skeptic on the subject, became an overnight believer when he saw the creature. So have some others who have become involved in the sighting. And involved right from the start were Milton Freewater, Oregon, members of the Umatilla County Sheriff's Search and Rescue Team. The team, headed by Art Snow and Ray Ralph, went to the site first over the Washington-Oregon line in Oregon, when the Forest Service investigators reported a strong odor in the area. The team went there because it was felt the body of Keith Zumpke might have been located. The mentally retarded man had last been seen late in October, only a short distance from the location of the reported sighting of the creature, Snow noted. Other members of the team included Mary Ralph and 2 Explorer Scout members, Dave Stevens and his sister Jackie. After spending several hours on the scene, and before the track had become obliterated by hundreds of curiosity seekers over the weekend, the search and rescue team left convinced Freeman had indeed seen something unusual to the Blue Mountains. We have no reason in the world to doubt Paul Freeman's story, said Snow. In fact, we couldn't think of any way he could possibly have faked it. We saw no evidence that we could dispute him. Ralph concurred with Snow. I have to believe the thing, Bigfoot, is real now, after seeing the prints and the area, but I was a non-believer before. The intense odor reported by Freeman in his report of the sighting might have been that which Forest Service investigators smelled and reported, Snow suggests. The search and rescue team, experts in the business of tracking, investigated both ends of the area in which 25 huge footprints had been found on the roadway, Snow says. Going the other way, down the road, as Bigfoot walked away from Freeman, resulted in the same thing as the tracks disappeared into a hard surface on the roadway, he says. The team had no dogs with them, but this wouldn't have helped, Snow says. A hound needs an article of clothing, a piece of hair, or something to get the scent. Otherwise, he doesn't know what he's tracking. From observations and tests at the scene, Snow has developed some interesting conjecture concerning the tracks. His estimate is that the creature weighed between 650 and 700 pounds. To make those tracks we saw going down that road, you'd have to put 650 vertical pounds of pressure on the ground to make them in the soil as we found it. Now, how do you move 650 pounds of weight down the road and make those tracks and only have those tracks showing? You could do it with a helicopter, but no other way. Stilts, it would take a heck of a guy to do that. Others check in. Since the report by Freeman, others have come forth to declare belief in the phenomenon or to report sightings here and in the Northwest. Wayne Long, Forest Service staffer here in charge of the investigation, reported a woman had called his office to report that she had seen the same creature in the same vicinity in 1968 and 69. One of the most interesting callers was the woman who saw the AP story in Boise, Idaho, then phoned to report her two sons had seen a Bigfoot 2 years ago while camping in the Sawtooth Mountains northeast of Boise. One of her sons, Clint Smith, 18, got on the phone to describe the creature which loomed in front of his van as the brothers were seeking a camping spot in the darkness before dawn. It walked out in the middle of the road in front of our van and stared at us. It was 8 feet or more with brown hair and reddish tint. It turned as we got within 15 feet of it, stared at us, and then shortly shot down the road and out of sight. Tell Freeman he's not the only one who believes in Bigfoot. We saw one too. When Freeman and his patrol rider companion, Bill Epic, a week later found more Bigfoot tracks, this time, just inside the watershed, a report was again filed. This time, a professional tracker was hired by the Forest Service by the name of Joel Harden. When Harden called the tracks hoaxed affairs, the Forest Service closed the book on the Bigfoot issue. This despite strong challenging by Freeman and others. A Bigfoot researcher even went so far as to suggest whitewashing of the whole matter by the Forest Service, a challenge never acknowledged as far as I know. Some who worked closely with Freeman also felt their patrol rider saw something, recalling how Freeman, 4 hours after his encounter, was still shaky over the meeting. Plaster casts of the Bigfoot's footprints have been gathered by the thousands over many years over most of the Northwest. Those gathered here haven't drawn any more credulity than the rest until recently. Now, after examining several casts made at the time of Freeman's sighting of Bigfoot in Tiger Saddle, as well as casts made of prints found inside the watershed, an anthropologist said in 1982 that these might be different. Grover Krantz, Washington State University anthropologist, who was the first such scientist to express belief in the man-like monsters, called the Freeman sighting of good quality. But it is the footprints which caught Krantz's attention in this incident. I've always found footprints more convincing than somebody's verbal account of a sighting, he said then. Why are the Mill Creek watershed footprints so significant? Krantz again was conservative in his reply, but he said 2 casts are of the left foot, which have differences in the toe positions which determine a very important feature. About a month after the Bigfoot sighting by Paul Freeman, the Bigfoot issue got hot again. It started with the finding of many huge tracks by some fishermen in the depths of the Wanaha-Tucannon Wilderness area. This is a Blue Mountain zone not ventured into by many. The following account is from my outdoors column in the Walla Walla Union Bulletin, telling of an experience in July 1982 of a fishing party. 6 men who packed into the Wanaha-Tucannon Wilderness area late in July on a fishing trip caught more than a mess of trout. They caught Bigfoot fever in a big way. Their account, which follows, will be updating of the Blue Mountains Bigfoot affair. This matter started early in June with the reported sighting of the creature. Freeman reported what he'd seen to his superiors, and his life hasn't been the same since. He says he quit his job with the U.S. Forest Service because of the flack he took about the Bigfoot sighting. He moved from Milton Freewater, Oregon to Athena, Oregon, and has since returned to Camas, Washington, from whence he and his wife Nancy and children had come when he took the Forest Service job. But Freeman has not given up on eventually finding a Bigfoot, if only to vindicate that he had truly seen the monster. Finding Bigfoot is a vow Freeman made to himself when he got all the flack. Seeking to fulfill it, he made more than one trip into the blues before he left Athena. What he and others found add much to this updating. One such trip came in late July, when Freeman's boss, Alan Mitchell of Athena, mentioned a fishing trip he and some others had planned into the Wanaha country. Freeman was invited to come along. Besides Mitchell and Freeman, the rest of the party consisted of Russ and Mike Evans, Andy Ely, and Rodney Bonifer. All live in the Adams-Athena area. All have spent time in the Wanaha country, and Mitchell says he has hunted and fished there for more than 25 years. Unloading their horses at Timothy Meadow, the party rode down the South Fork of the Wanaha River to make camp near the mouth of Milk Creek, a favorite camping place of hunters and anglers. Mitchell struck off downstream to do some fishing before it got too dark. On his return to camp, he found the others buzzing about seeing big footprints and that Freeman had made some plaster of Paris cats. I just said, "Yeah, okay," and went off to bed. Mitchell says of the incident, "I've never been concerned with that Bigfoot stuff in the past." The next morning, Mitchell and Mike Evans saddled up and took a ride down toward Shoefly Creek, about a mile from camp. Mitchell became a Bigfoot believer, he says. He and Evans came upon scores of big footprints, 3 different sizes in the lot, that he swears could not have been faked. Absolutely no way possible, he says. "Don't disturb anything," Mitchell advised Evans. "Freeman hasn't been up here yet." A big man, it required 3 of Mitchell's steps to stretch from one of the big footprints to the next, it says. As near as I could figure, the Bigfoot would have had to be right at 6 foot high at the crotch, and would have had to weigh around 1,200 pounds to sink into the mud as deep as those prints were, Mitchell says. "My horse weighs around 1,200 pounds, and I walked him through the mud and he didn't sink as deep as those feet did. Nobody could have faked those prints." Mitchell and Evan tied up their horses and followed his tracks. "We found tracks all over the place for a quarter mile, and including 3 different sets. One was a cripple-footed one, just like Freeman had made a cast of back at camp," Mitchell says. Mitchell figures the 3 creatures were in the bottom of the canyon of the Wanaha when the party of 6 men rode in, and 3 spooked and headed up into the rugged Shoefly Creek region. The men weren't too far away from the man-like creatures, he says. Patches of melonweed were trampled and rolled in and looked like something had just done it before they got there, he says. Mitchell took pictures of the prints, and Freeman has casts of 3 different tracks he found on the Wanaha. As to publicity about this find on Shoefly Creek, Mitchell said he didn't care what you in the paper. "Nobody is going to prove I didn't see the tracks. I have the proof the tracks are there. Print what you want, but that's the truth." Yes, the Bigfoot of the Blue Mountains was a hot subject that summer of 1982, and all the best-known people who had anything to do with Bigfoots Sasquatches, or Yetis, got a look at the scene here and some of the action too. The meager role of the scientist even got a look and some commentary. My Union Bulletin Outdoors column for July 4th, 1982 was a good case in point. While the skeptics have had a field day with the Bigfoot matter, a lot of people regard it with seriousness. Joining a host of such believers is an increasing number of anthropologists who have replied to a challenge issued in 1970 by a leading figure in the Bigfoot Sasquatch story. The challenger was John Green, a former publisher of a weekly newspaper at a tiny town in central British Columbia, who has departed the publishing field to devote full time to the Bigfoot thing, following his first book, On the Track of the Sasquatch. Green took anthropologists to task for not gathering up material concerning the matter. This challenge came on the heels of Green's second book about Bigfoot, Year of the Sasquatch, in which he reviews literally hundreds, if not thousands, of recorded footprints of some unknown creature in situations where they could not have been made by pranksters, machinery, or known animals, says Roderick Sprague, director of the Laboratory of Anthropology, University of Idaho. As a result of Green's challenge and the invitation of Sprague, editor of Northwest Anthropological Research, notes for scientists to reply, several articles appeared and have been published as a collection. The collection, first published as a book in 7 articles, was put together by Sprague and Grover Krantz, professor of anthropology at Washington State University. The second edition, published in 1979, contains 3 more articles. More articles are sought, Sprague notes. We welcome any reasonably scientific paper dealing with the Sasquatch phenomenon. We are not suggesting the acceptance or rejection of the belief in Sasquatch, but rather the unfettered anthropological study of such beliefs, either positive or negative. When reports began circulating about the Bigfoot sighting near the boundary of the Mill Creek watershed by trail writer Paul Freeman, Sprague sent me a copy of the book, The Scientist Looks at Sasquatch 2. For those who want to gain serious insight into the subject, I recommend a reading of that book. Not only for its fascinating articles telling the story of the Sasquatch in a short book, but for the many reference books cited. If you get hooked on the subject, there is ample source material to go to further. At the outset, Krantz, one of the first anthropologists to state his belief that the Sasquatch exists, has very interesting commentary, not the least of which are his own views. The Sasquatch is not human. It is probably Gigantopithecus, and its reality can be established only with an actual specimen. Krantz goes on from there to point out that the articles have been written by scholars, mostly anthropologists, who are able to bring considerable expertise to bear on the matter. While only 3 of the 8 authors, himself, Gordon Strassenberg, and Dmitry Bayanov, a Russian scientist, are satisfied that the Sasquatch is in fact a living animal species. The others profess at least to have open minds as to its reality. All agree that it is a valid field of inquiry and not to be ignored, as has generally been done in the past. Perhaps the appearance of this volume will stimulate others with pertinent information to offer to a wider audience. Krantz provides answers to some of the most asked questions about Bigfoot, the leading being, why haven't we found bones of a Sasquatch? No explanation is needed. It would be quite surprising if there were any bones found, he says. It is not normal to find the remains of large, uncommon animals. I have yet to find a hunter or game guide who has found a bear that died a natural death. Hikers never come across the bones of wolves, coyotes, martens, badgers, unless they were killed by humans. Another question, akin to the first, is this one. With so many hunters out in the hills, why hasn't somebody shot one by now? Besides replying with some psychological logic, Krantz lists 3 reasons. In the first place, the Sasquatch is apparently a very rare animal. There may be 100 bears for every Sasquatch, so the number of encounters with man is correspondingly low. Second, the Sasquatch seems to be mainly nocturnal, thus reducing encounters still more. Third, their eyesight is at least as good as ours, which makes them far better able than bears to avoid human contact if they wish to. Krantz, by the way, makes the interesting observation that the mountains today probably have fewer people in them than at any time in the last 12,000 years. Gone are the Indians, the trappers, prospectors, explorers, even sizable numbers of loggers. Another question about the Sasquatch of prime interest is the Sasquatch human? To which Krantz strongly says no. Walking on 2 legs does not make an animal human, unless one wishes to include penguins, tyrannosaurus, and kangaroos in this category, he says. There are 3 more lines of evidence which might indicate human culture, making and using of tools coordinated with social groups and communication of information by language. No dependable Sasquatch reports include any of these activities. The Sasquatch appears to be a perfectly normal animal. Krantz, who has remained at the forefront of the Bigfoot issue since the 1970s, was a central figure later in 1982 at a conference of the International Society of Cryptozoology at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver, BC. It was at this session that Krantz made some exciting revelations about tracks of the Blue Mountains Bigfoot. What he said makes him different from all other Bigfoot tracks which have been found elsewhere to that date. Krantz told fellow ISC members at the conference that the Bigfoot of the Blues made tracks containing skin ridges and furrows like those found only on the higher primates. The fine details on the casts is evidence of the authenticity of the legendary ape-like creature that is said to roam furtively throughout the Pacific Northwest, the AP story noted, as its writer quoted Krantz. Krantz went on, the ridge and furrow pattern is something I'm afraid, for a number of reasons, seems to be beyond the ability of anybody to fake. Krantz said the arch pattern of the ridges and the narrow furrows were exactly the kind you expect in a primate. He also said the cast shows some distinctive movement of the toes. This AP story held another interesting point or two. It had a quote from Paul Freeman, who said he felt vindicated by France's findings. Freeman also announced that he would hunt for the creature until he found one, exactly what he has been doing for 10 years. The AP story out of Vancouver conference concluded, in advancing his claim of authenticity, Krantz said the area in which the prints were found, less than 25 miles east of Walla Walla, Washington, was inaccessible to the public, and that the stride between the prints and their depth indicated the creature was more than 8 feet tall and weighed about 750 pounds. While there is nothing remarkably new in this, the information combined with the existence of the dermal ridges make the sighting more believable than others, Grant said. The casts are the first of thousands that have been over the years to clearly show dermal ridges, Grant said. He attributed that to the good mud the prints were found in. Krantz said a police fingerprint expert who studied the casts is convinced the ridges could not have been made by a human pushing his fingers into the print. As I mentioned above, in reporting the challenge of John Green, one of the very first investigators of the Bigfoot, it was to note that several others like him had put in an appearance in Walla Walla following Freeman's sighting. These included Bob Titmus and Rene DeHenden, the latter having investigated Bigfoot for about 40 years, and Titmus claims he has seen 3 of the creatures. I penned this report in my July 1982 column. Wayne Long, a fire management officer of the Walla Walla district of the Umatilla National Forest, talked at length with Green and Titmus when they were here. He spoke highly of their objectivity. They obviously came here to examine the Bigfoot issue, not pro or anti-Bigfoot, just here to examine the material and to ask questions. Both had seen hoaxes before about the Bigfoot thing. They both talked to Freeman and both seemed to think Freeman truly had seen something. Yes, it was pretty obvious that Paul Freeman had seen something that day in June 1982. But would he be able to vindicate his first experience with finally again sighting and possibly the capture of a Bigfoot? It would seem a nearly impossible venture, but it is a venture we will all tell about in the full story of the Bigfoot of the Blues. The full story will hold much more about this elusive creature and how it made camping, fishing, and hunting of the Blue Mountains an experience sometime out of this world. The full story of the Bigfoot of the Blues will contain information about the Bigfoot in general, and especially its life here, plus answer to these questions. Is there more than one Bigfoot here? Is there a family of Bigfoots? Is there a UFO connection with the animal? Is it one of this world, or are there paranormal aspects to consider? If yes is the answer to most of the above, we have the makings of a book well worth your reading. Read by Tom Pappy Cantrell. End of Chapter 2.